So good morning. Welcome to this worship service for First Parish Church of Kingston, Massachusetts. I am the Reverend Monica Jacobson Tennyson. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve this church as its minister. It is November 8th, and on this historic morning, we have gathered to worship together. Linda Loring has our chalice lighting words this morning, and you are invited to light your chalice as she reads those words for us. And you will have to, there you go.
This is from Reverend Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision. Bring them with you and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and your powers to heal. There is work to do, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this room.
Thank you. We are going to share a little singing now in this Zoom room. We have the beautiful Holly Near song and hymn, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People." As always, you are invited to sing along while you are muted with this recording, which Peter Eldridge made for us.
We are a gentle, angry people. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people. We are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people. We are singing, singing for our lives.
Thank you for joining in that music, and my gratitude to Peter, who's not on this morning, for recording it. I am going to pass the spotlight over to our Director of Family Ministry, Jen Shattuck.
Good morning, everybody. How are we this morning? Hello. I have with me today my friend, your friend, everybody's friend, Mr. Fred Rogers. I wish he was really here. We need him more than ever, but a magazine will do. So we know that Mr. Rogers is most famous these days for his advice to look for the helpers. And this is wonderful advice for any time, but he also dispensed all sorts of other advice through more than 200 songs that he wrote for his TV show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And there are some of us here today who are exactly the right age to have watched this as our parents were cooking dinner in the evening. And one of the songs that you might remember is What Do You Do? And it's a song that acknowledges that we are, all of us, gentle, angry people, that we have both things inside of us. And it was inspired by a young child who had asked Mr. Rogers at a talk that he had given, what do you do with the mad that you feel? So this was sometime back in 1967. A 3-year-old child had asked Mr. Rogers, what do you do? And he was a songwriter and a storyteller, and he thought, I can write a song about that might be instructive to younger people and older people. So in this song, What Do You Do with the Mad That You Feel, he gives us 2 pieces of really good advice that would be echoed today by people who study stress management. That sounds really funny, but it's true. So in the song, What Do You Do? He says, what do you do with the mad that you feel when you feel so mad you could bite? What do you do with the mad that you feel when nothing you do seems really right? And that seems like a song for 2020, right? The last few months have been that sort of time. And so he gives us 2 pieces of advice, one of which is to move it out of our body. He says you can pound some dough. You can hit a bag. He uses very strong, evocative language to say we need to move stress through our body so that we can release it. He doesn't just say, oh, take a nice little walk. No, he's giving us permission to pound things. Pound some dough, transform something, really, really move it out of your body. And that can be a really helpful thing. As we move our bodies, we feel less stressed. So that he was meaning it for very young children and the parents who were watching as well. This is a piece of advice that we all perhaps could use at any time, but maybe especially now. And the other piece of advice that Mr. Rogers gives is find your people, share your mad or whatever big feelings that you have. He says, round up friends for a game of tag. Now, that is hard in these times. I will admit that. Maybe it's not the easiest thing to do to round up your people and share what's going on with you and get it out together. But there are ways that we can do this. You might be on some text threads, or you might do some Zoom gatherings. And these things can be useful. Maybe not as useful as getting together in person, but I feel sure that Mr. Rogers would want us to do what we can for these times that we are living in. So he says it much better than I can, but because of copyright restrictions, I cannot play the song for you, but I will drop the link in the comments so that if you want to, you know, have a little soothing moment of Fred Rogers singing to you, it's very calming, you can.
Thank you, Jen. We now also have a reading, so I'm going to pass the spotlight over to Linda to share that with us.
This is from Reverend Cameron Trimble, writing on Election Day. Much is at stake. We are all highly emotionally charged, no matter what side we find ourselves on with these issues. Over the next few days, some of us are going to be overjoyed, and some of us are going to be heartbroken by the results. Some of us may find ourselves in greater danger. Some may experience targeted oppression. All of us will feel the stress of a divided nation trying to find its way through this painful chapter in our history. We will be harmed even more if any of us believe this moment is about winning and losing. No matter the outcome, all of us will lose if we let this election divide us further. While much is on the line, we must not sacrifice our clarity of the call to love one another. We must not lose perspective, especially as people of faith. We are called to love our neighbors, especially those with whom we disagree. I offer that word with this one caution. We are not called to love our abusive neighbor, our violent neighbor, our oppressive neighbor in a way that allows for further abuse, violence, and oppression. We can love with boundaries. We can love each other and say, no, you may not deny my rights. You can still love me and say, no, I will not ignore your racism. A love that includes a no rooted in justice frees us to trust the yes rooted in grace. Our love for one another must be at the heart of any redemptive path forward, but it cannot be boundaryless, spineless, or wimpy. The love we must offer to one another holds us all to a greater account, as the prophet Micah says, to act justly, love with mercy, and walk humbly with God. This election isn't about winning or losing. It's about finding our way back to a love wide, deep, and broad enough that it includes us all.
Thank you, Linda. We're going to sing together again. This time we have hymn number 51, Lady of the Season's Laughter, which Tom Agello recorded for us.
Lady of the season's laughter, in the summer's warmth be near. When the winter follows after, teach our spirits not to fear. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning year. Sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay, here among us till the far light of tomorrow's dawning ray. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning day. Mother of the generations, in whose love all life is worth, everlasting celebrations bring our labor safe to birth. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning earth. Goddess of all time's progression, stand with us when we engage, hands and hearts to end oppression, writing history's fairer page. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning age.
Thank you for joining in that singing. So this week, you might imagine it was an interesting task to put together a worship service for the Sunday after an election when we didn't know how long it would take to get results or what state we would be in by Sunday. And it made me think a lot about the 2016 election and my experience preparing to preach the Sunday after the election 4 years ago. That time, I watched Stephen Colbert's election night coverage. I really enjoy getting my news from the late night hosts because often what is challenging to hear is easier to hear with a joke. But I also find that Stephen Colbert is someone who has a deep love for America and who is not afraid to be vulnerable and to say things that need to be said. And 4 years ago, I remember him saying, you know, surveys show that each half of the country is terrified of the leadership and empowerment of the other half. And he said, I don't like knowing that the morning after we get election results, half of Americans will wake up afraid of what the other half will do. I have thought about that a lot over the last 4 years. And I'm thinking about that now, as many people are experiencing relief and joy. And it does not change the fact that there are also many of our neighbors and our fellow citizens who are very afraid. I did a de-escalation training about a week ago, one intended to help religious leaders who found themselves at protests and counter-protests and all sorts of things where emotions were running high, intended to help us step in and help things calm down a little bit, to help there be a little less chance of things getting out of hand. And one of the things we talked about at that training were the 3 fundamental questions that people ask themselves in all circumstances. Am I safe? Do I belong? And can I matter? Am I safe here? Do I belong with this group of people? And am I able to make a difference with what I do with my time and my life? Feeling like the answer to any of those questions is no is a very challenging and sometimes frightening sensation. And so one of the things we talked about at this training was trying to determine which of these questions a person might be struggling with and how to connect with them a little bit, even across incredible gaps of ideological difference. How do you find the other person's humanity and say, I know you feel unsafe. How can I help you feel a little safer? I know you feel like you don't have a place to belong. Let's you and I have a conversation and see if we can calm that down for you a little bit. I know what you want to do is not what I wish you would do, but you can make choices with your life which make a difference. We talked too about the question, what is peace? And one of the answers that emerged from this group from a rabbi was that peace is shalom in Hebrew, a word which means wholeness. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the creation of a world in which people can bring their full selves and they can grow. They can become more and more who they are meant to be. I was powerfully reminded of a piece by Parker Palmer, which he wrote about 4 years ago. Parker Palmer is a Quaker activist and theologian who shares a lot of incredible wisdom about the work of being human. In this piece, he wrote, heartbreak comes with the territory of being human. When love and trust fail us, when what once brought meaning goes dry, when a dream drifts out of reach, a devastating disease strikes, or someone precious to us dies, our hearts break and we suffer. What can we do with our pain? How might we hold it and work with it? How do we turn the power of suffering toward new life? The way we answer these questions is critical because violence is what happens when we don't know what else to do with our suffering. Violence is not limited to inflicting physical harm. We do violence every time we violate the sanctity of the human self, our own or another person's. Sometimes we try to numb the pain of suffering in ways that dishonor our souls. We turn to noise and frenzy, nonstop work, or substance abuse as anesthetics that only deepen our suffering. Sometimes we visit violence upon others, as if causing them pain would mitigate our own. Racism, sexism, homophobia, and contempt for the poor are among the cruel outcomes of this demented strategy. We have seen a lot of suffering visited upon our fellow citizens in this country over these past years. And we know we will see more. We know that some of us are more vulnerable and some of us are less vulnerable, depending on our identity constellations and our economics and our citizenship status. So as many of us celebrate today, it is important to remember that the work continues and that ultimately our work is to try to help everyone in our country to suffer less, to do less violence to themselves or to their neighbors, to notice the ways in which we suffer and to learn to hold and transform our suffering. Parker Palmer goes on to say, we all know people who've suffered the loss of the most important person in their lives. At first, they disappear into grief, certain that life will never again be worth living. But through some sort of spiritual alchemy, they eventually emerge to find that their hearts have grown larger and more compassionate. They have developed a greater capacity to take in others' sorrows and joys, not in spite of their loss, but because of it. Suffering breaks our hearts, but there are two quite different ways for the heart to break. There's the brittle heart that breaks apart into 1,000 shards, a heart that takes us down as it explodes and is sometimes thrown like a grenade at the source of its pain. Then there's the supple heart, the one that breaks open, not apart, growing into greater capacity for the many forms of love. Only the supple heart can hold suffering in a way that opens to new life. What can I do to make my tight heart more supple? He asks, the way a runner stretches to avoid injury. That's a question I ask myself every day. With regular exercise, my heart is less likely to break apart into shards that may become shrapnel, and more likely to break open into largeness. There are many ways to make the heart more supple, but all of them come down to this. Take it in. Take it all in. He counsels us to be as fully alive in our lives as we can manage to be, to notice and to feel fully the times of pain and loss and anger, to heed the advice of Fred Rogers and to feel those feelings and move them through our bodies, and to be fully awake and alive in the moments of beauty and joy as well, to celebrate life's sweetnesses, to take in beauty, to laugh with children. This is the work of religious people, living all that life brings us. Rabbi Alan Liu said, joy is any feeling that you feel fully, even if it's grief. We are going to be called to have supple hearts, hearts that break open, hearts that help our neighbors when their hearts break into shattering, hearts that help us notice where we can make a difference for the planet and for our neighbors and for our families and for ourselves. You probably are feeling the easiest kind of joy today, but I remind you that feeling everything fully is a way to continue rejoicing in life. And as I call you to practice having these supple hearts, I remind you too of Reverend Cameron Trimble's words, that this is going to be a time to practice love, to try to heal this country, but to practice love with boundaries. We know that pain and fear can lead people to harmful behavior. And we know that while all emotions can be felt, not all behaviors should be carried out. So I want to invite you to share with me an embodied practice I learned at this de-escalation training, a practice called the 2 hands of nonviolence. You hold up one hand like this, and with this hand, we say to an oppressor or to an unjust system, stop what you are doing. I refuse to honor the role you are choosing to play. I refuse to obey you. I refuse to cooperate with your demands. I refuse to build the walls and the bombs. I refuse to pay for the guns. With this hand, I will interfere with the wrong you are doing. I want to disrupt the easy pattern of your life. And then we hold up our other hand. It is outstretched, maybe with love and sympathy, maybe some days not, but always outstretched. And with this hand, we say, I won't let go of you or cast you out of the human race. I have faith that you can make a better choice than you are making now. And I'll be here when you are ready. Like it or not, we are part of one another. These are the words of the writer and activist Barbara Deming. And I find them a powerful posture to imagine taking as often as necessary. Both hands to say, we remain connected even when there are things that must stop. In this challenging season we find ourselves in, with earthquakes and runoff races, we will need to practice being fully alive and holding up both hands as we keep our hearts open. May we work together to help each of our hearts grow. May it be so. We have one more brief hymn to share. And I will pull that up for us and invite you to listen along or to join in singing, whatever is best for you.
The world stands out on either side, no wider than the heart is wide. Above the world is stretched the sky, no higher than the soul is high. The heart can push the sea and land, so far away on either hand. The soul can split the sky in two, and let the face of God shine through.
Linda has our words for introducing the offering this morning.
At this time in our service, we receive our offering. One small form of action we can take is to share generously from the gifts of our lives, joining our resources with others so that together we can do more than any of us could do alone. Your offerings this morning fund the ongoing work of this congregation as we strengthen each other to do the work of love and justice in the world, which is so sorely needed. There's a link in the chat box for online giving, or you can mail a check to the church office. Please know that what you give will be most gratefully received.
Thank you, Tony. I'm going to pass it back to Linda once more for our closing words, after which we will stop the recording and have a chance to share joys and sorrows amongst our community.
This is from Reverend Rebecca Parker. Even when our hearts are broken by our own failure or the failure of others cutting into our lives, Even when we have done all we can and life is still broken, there is a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will.